Here's Ron DeSantis giving Steve Ducey a tour of Alligator Alcatraz, in which he claims, "What are you gonna do? Trudge through the swamp and dodge alligators on your way back to civilization?" Here's Ron DeSantis.
Country of Alcatraz. Alcatraz is surrounded by a bay. Here in the Everglades, you're actually surrounded by gators and pythons.
So this is as secure as it gets. I mean, if a criminal alien were to escape from here somehow, and I don't think they will, you've got nowhere to go. I mean, what are you going to do? Trudge through the swamp and dodge alligators on the way back to 50, 60 miles just to get to civilization? Not going to happen. So not only that is it secure, it also takes this deportation mission out of the hair of our local and state law enforcement. This has no impact on Florida residents because some of that stuff can have an impact on them if it's in more populated areas. And so logistically, this really answers the call.
So he says this has no impact on Florida residents. And we've heard over and over again that this is very far from civilization. There's no people for miles and miles around here. It takes hours and hours to drive out here 50 miles from the nearest town, and that this is going to have minimal impact on Florida residents. So, I made the mistake of taking that at face value, not remembering that when they say there's no people around out here, what they of course mean is that there's no white people around out here. Yeah. Because actually, this is not uninhabited land. The land is not as uninhabitable as they're making it out to be. It's uninhabitable for obese trailer trash who live on Arthur Treacher's and Mountain Dew, but it's not uninhabitable for the native population who are at harmony with the natural world around them. So here we're going to hear from some local natives about the inhabitants of this land and how the construction of this Alligator Alcatraz facility encroaches on them. So this is from last year. This is just some backstory on who these people are and where they live and how they live there. This was a PBS report that was clipped for TikTok.
About the misconceptions that you think the outside non-native world has with the Miccosukee tribe.
Sure. I mean, the most common one, and that's why we have a village, is because they think we live in teepees. Or actually, you'd be surprised because I've done a lot of traveling through the country and people are like, "Oh, what are you?" I always try to describe myself as a human first, and people don't like that. So when I get to describing myself as Miccosukee, it's like, "Oh, you're native?" And sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, we thought you were all dead." So it's a lot of misconceptions that we have to combat. One, we're still here. One, we're still alive. And we have a different way of philosophy, the way we look at life. For example, we have gaming, but that's only so we can fund everything we're doing here as far as trying to protect the environment. It's not only our spiritual and cultural duty to protect the land that protected us, it's also our civic duty. It's actually in our Constitution. We have to conserve the land and resources for future generations.
What's the best way to talk about the Miccosukee? Can we use the term Indian or Native American or Indigenous?
Well, we prefer, to be known as Miccosukee. We're a sovereign nation, and that's the name that we chose to be called.
Whether you call us Indian or whatever, as long as you treat us as a human, that's the main thing, because that's the thing that people often, whatever term you use, is it just a means to devalue us or just to acknowledge who we are as a people? That's more important than those terminologies in the end. Although I will say that internally, as we've been writing our history, whenever there's a reference to natives, we just put natives. We don't put Native Americans, because we were native before we were forced to be Americans.
Are some Miccosukees getting hate? When we see our world right now is so divided. Do you see that? Is that happening? And do you talk about that with some of the students as well, about how to deal with hate?
Yeah, I would often have to prepare them because we are targets sometimes in Miami or Naples or surrounding communities for one reason or the other. So I'd have to prepare them for that world. In fact, I'd always tell them, when you're in the wild, and I meant like the city, because here, this saved us. This is like, we know this land. We're not in danger. You get somebody from Miami to come out here, they're freaking out about snakes or alligators or whatever. It's just part of our existence. Miami, by comparison, is much more wild and untamed. So I always have to prepare them for that element.
The tribe and tribal members in the past were very standoffish and more contentious. And for their reasons, right? They faced a lot more adversity back then. But right now, I think we've taken a different approach to it, which is a lot of community outreach, so we can better understand each other. Because South Florida is still growing, and they're not going anywhere, and we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, that seems like a nicer and more humane civilization than ours to me.
Yeah.
And it's right there, right where Alligator Alcatraz has just been parked. So here's the Miccosukee tribal member, same guy, Popeye, as he's known, talking to ABC News about the construction of Alligator Alcatraz and how this encroaches on the sovereignty of his land and his people.
Florida officials have named Alligator Alcatraz borders the Miccosukee Reservation. Miccosukee Business Council Secretary William Osceola joins us now. William, thank you so much for talking with us. Florida officials have said that there's not much other than pythons and alligators in the area. What do you want people to know about this location?
Well, if there's only pythons and alligators, I'm wondering what I'm doing in that area and what my people and my family have been doing in the area for centuries.
Fair.
Tell us what is there beyond what they're describing.
There are about 19 traditional villages as well as our main reservation. There's also numerous gladesmen who've been there for quite a while as well. So it's not just the tribe that has a footprint in the area, but, fellow Americans.
How close is this proposed detention center to your reservation, and how may this detention center impact your tribe?
It's about 20-minute drive from our reservation, but as I mentioned, there are villages right by. In fact, it's less than 100 yards down the road from one of our Panther Camp villages.
Less than 100 yards down the road from one of their villages. I thought there was no civilization around for miles and miles. I thought this was a prison without a land for a land without a prison. I thought that's what this was. Apparently not. No, just like in Palestine, there are people here. There's people here that we were just never told about because I guess they don't count. I guess they count as much as the Palestinians do.
No. The surrounding Native American tribes moved them in to make the project look bad. They weren't there before.
Right. Exactly, yes.
A village that would often take our students to go gigging to engage in traditional activities. So right now, I would say it's reminding us that we are not done trying to secure our future like we thought we were.
Much of South Florida draws their drinking water from the Everglades. Should the 8 million people in the region be concerned?
I would always be concerned when there's an increased presence within the Everglades itself and the Big Cypress. Anybody who spends any amount of time out there can tell you there are a myriad of issues that still need to be addressed, whether it's pollution or invasive species, and those haven't been addressed to the capacity they need, and now we're adding further potential issues upon that, and you're adding stress to an ecosystem that's been under enough stress already for centuries.
Yeah, he's being a little alarmist there. I'm sure none of the human waste from this facility of thousands of people out in the middle of a swamp in a tent, I'm sure none of that waste is going to end up in the water.
Not at all. Nah. These are the kinds of people who are going to account for all that and make sure that doesn't happen.
Right.
These are the kind of people who would never just throw up a tent that can't possibly hold up to the kinds of hurricanes that this region regularly experiences and have it flood virtually as soon as they put it up without any of those stresses. Not those kinds of people. They're going to plan for all that.
Yeah. No, they would never.
They're not just going to let the shit roll right
shit
into the
Right.
Everglades. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
These guys, never.
Never. But, his heart is in the right place, right? Better safe than sorry, I suppose. So here's an NBC News piece. Debate over Alligator Alcatraz Detention Center, a personal one for members of the Miccosukee and Seminole tribes. The constant rumbling of passing dump trucks drowns out the once familiar chirping of birds at the family home of Mayana Osceola Hart in Everglades National Park. It's all day, all night truck noise, says the 21-year-old photographer who describes herself as part Miccosukee and part Seminole, two Florida tribes at the heart of the debate over the detention center known as Alligator Alcatraz. The homes of Miccosukee and Seminole people, as well as their ceremonial sites, surround the detention center on three sides. Osceola Hart's great-grandfather, Wild Bill Osceola, fought against the development of an airport at the same site where the ICE facility's construction is now underway. In 1968, authorities in Dade County, now known as Miami-Dade County, began building the Big Cypress Jetport on land the Miccosukees use for ceremonial practices. The Dade County Port Authority referred to the project as the world's largest airport, with 6 runways designed to handle large jets and officials were quoted as calling the environmental and tribal leaders who opposed it butterfly chasers. Nice. Happy 4th of July, everybody. What a great country you live in. The airport became a flashpoint for resistance, but in 1969, a coalition including Osceola Hart's great-grandfather, fellow tribesman and conservationist, persuaded Florida Governor Claude R. Kirk Jr. that the airport would damage the Everglades. He ordered construction to be stopped. One runway, approximately 10,000 feet in length, was left behind as a training ground for pilots. Osceola Hart is proud of her great-grandfather's efforts to stop the 1960s development, but she is disappointed the Miccosukkees lost land they considered sacred. We got kicked out of ceremonial grounds, she says. Finding a safe place to live has been an ongoing battle for the tribes in Florida. Seminoles retreated into the Everglades after the Seminole Wars ended in 1858. The Miccosukkees found refuge in the Everglades after development in Miami and Fort Lauderdale pushed them out of their settlements. Now, many members of the tribes live on the Big Cypress Reservation or in camps of wooden homes along Tamiami Trail on Highway 41, a road that slices the Everglades east to west and disrupts the natural flow of water from Lake Okeechobee to the park. Construction of that road ended in 1928, changing life dramatically in the Everglades. Tourists were able to access remote areas of the lush national park. The tribes developed tourist attractions like casinos, the chickee huts, and airboat tours through the mangroves. Native species declined. See, so they built the gaming up because the tourists were coming there anyway. Leaders of both tribes are constantly advocating for the preservation of the national park's wildlife and vegetation, but they don't have authority over how the land is used. It's a long, fraught battle, says William Popeye Osceola, it's the guy we just saw in those two videos, secretary of the Miccosukee tribe, describing how tribes are constantly fighting for rights over the land they have lived on for more than a century. Before he became the tribe's secretary, an elected position, Osceola was an art teacher at the Miccosukee Indian School, passing on the tribe's traditions to his students. It's a place where we come for healing, where we come to pray, says Betty Osceola, a prominent member of the Miccosukee tribe, who is part of the Everglades Advisory Board. Her Chickee village is within walking distance of the detention site. So here is Betty. She is out with the protesters, probably as we speak, certainly over the first days of the week. And here's some of her.
Advocate for all of us. And I don't know if any of you have prayed to a spiritual place, or maybe you go to church to find that spiritual place, or wherever your spiritual place is. Find it in your hearts to pray for these people who are lost so that they can become human beings again. Because we need, if they're human beings again, this will stop.
Pray for the people who are lost so they become human beings again, because if they do, this will stop. Referring, it sounds like, to the people who support this project.
Find it in your hearts to pray for these people who are lost so that they can become human beings again. Because we need, if they're human beings again, this will stop.
It's kind of a noble message, right? Pray for the people who are doing this to find their humanity so that this stops. But you know, that video was actually embedded in the tweet of a lowlife who goes by the name of Alina, who tweets out, LMAO, Florida liberals. This woman ain't no liberal. I promise you. This woman goes through more in a day than you've been through in your whole life. This is not a latte liberal out here. LMAO, Florida liberals protest Alligator Alcatraz detention facility construction, but they cannot block the road because in Florida, it is legal to run over people who crowd your vehicle. Law and order state. They're staying behind the line. Again, I want you to just compare. If you don't know anything, let's say you know nothing about immigration, you know nothing about the politics of the situation. Look at that woman saying what she just said, and then look at the people on the other side saying, ha, 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 if you step over the line, you're going to get run over because Florida's a law and order state where they're allowed to just run through peaceful protesters. Again, just a pretty stark difference. Pretty stark difference in character, I would say. So before the construction was expedited, right, at the early phase of this was from, I believe, what is it, June? 24th. So this was about 9 or 10 days ago. Protesters were already out here. Alligator Alcatraz faces backlash from Everglades advocates. So we're going to play some of this video here. I'm going to talk over the first part. I had to mute it because there's copyrighted music there. But here are some protesters lining the streets as of 10 days ago here. Quite a big crowd. Again, this is kind of difficult to get to. And you don't want the alligators to jump up and get you while you're protesting. But here they are out here. Okay, now we're going to have sound in just a second.
Let's just accept me that the whole concept of this god-awful place. You can ask anybody that's familiar with the Everglades that it's the most beautiful place in the world.
Amen.
Yeah! Thank you guys for coming out. It's a hot day and a couple of mosquitoes here and there.
A long time ago, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and Joe Browder, and a lot of others got started in Everglades restoration by fighting the jet port. A bad idea then, and it's a bad idea now.
All I ask for you is to love it and care for it. And return that love and care. So thank you for that.
And finally, here is William Popeye Osceola on the scene of the protest. Again, here he is. I want to give a shout out to Greg, the TikToker here, gre.vo, the Florida filmmaker. Follow his TikTok. Everybody who's out here doing this, doing a good job. I know Status Quo sent someone out there. They weren't able to stream, I'm assuming because the internet's lousy out there, but hopefully they'll have some video to drop. But yeah, good on everybody who's out there covering this. So give this guy a follow if you're on the TikToks, gre.vo. Here's a brief interview with William Osceola on the scene of the protests.
William Osceola, I go by Popeye, Secretary of the Miccosukee Indian Tribe. Out here today to protest Alligator Alcatraz. It's important to note that people need to stay involved with their government because if not, history backslides to what happened already. You're seeing a situation here where they're trying to contain a group of people, take away their rights, their freedom, their ability to be free, to be sovereign. That's literally why my people are out here to begin with. We don't want history to keep repeating itself, so I urge you, learn your history, stay engaged, stay involved, never give up that fight. That's what they want. They want you to give up. They want you to tear each other apart. You can't give them what they want. Thank you.
So, how ironic and poetic it is that Native Americans whose land was invaded illegally and stolen from them illegally through the most brutal of means are out there protesting against this immigrant jail, right?
Yeah.
I guess kindness skipped, 40 generations on this land?
Yeah, well, it's so revealing, that clip that you showed of the older woman saying, "May they become human," right? Like philosophically praying for your enemies,
right,
in that way, and just seeing it that way because they're right. I mean, you're maybe a little more misanthropic than I am. When I see people who are so ignorant, screaming about, "Well, don't come here and look at it," like, man, they're at a low level of consciousness. Like they're I think people are mostly animals with the potential of being human. I don't think most people are really fully human in that way.
And I'm even more cynical than him.
Yeah, and he's even more cynical than I am. But I mean, in terms of consciousness, you got the lower level consciousness just working off very base impulses and instincts, kind of reptile brain. I think that's where most people live, honestly. And you have the potential to become human. It takes some effort. And I think that's kind of philosophically what she's saying there. I mean, she might not mean it as broadly as I do, but I think that's basically what she's saying. Like, yeah, man, I mean, you're at a very low level of thinking to think like this. You're thinking like an animal. And I hope you become human. I mean, that's the core philosophy behind Hinduism, Buddhism, right? The idea is this practice is going to elevate your consciousness so that you become human. The culture that we have actively encourages people to be impulsive animals. And that that's not just about MAGA. That's, consumerism relies on people being impulsive and not thinking things through and not really being fully conscious. I mean, if you really develop as a human, those material things are not really what concern you. You're not going to be fixated on that kind of thing. People are encouraged to be just driven by like an infant, like children, to you see, you want, oh, I want that, have to have that. That's what the culture is built around. And it's not healthy. And it creates all kinds of just very warped and ugly ways of being in the world. Not just among the people who think it's a great idea to throw a bunch of people who aren't them for now into a prison in the middle of a swamp to be eaten by alligators. The whole civilization, man. It's what I always say, man. And anyone who's traveled will tell you this. As soon as you leave America, like the West has its problems generally, but America has bad juju, man. You go and you as soon as you leave, everyone's nicer. It's less tense. This is just a very, very ugly society, and it's just getting worse almost every day.
Well, I mean, look, what I would say is, these people, these activists are very inspiring, and
Oh,
you know,
yes.
what I would also say is, we've been asked a lot about, hey, maybe once a week feature an activist group like this, do profiles on
Yes.
this, and it is important to do, and it's just something that has not the grueling schedule of doing as many streams a week as we do has not really allowed for it. So what we are doing in a couple of weeks, we're bringing on a segment producer to help us. I won't say their name because they have a real job that I'm assuming they want to keep. But we are going to bring on some help for production with the show, which means we'll still do
We're
all the same
expanding.
amount of shows. Yes. But we will do other projects in addition to the show. Russ is going to focus more on video essays. I'm going to focus more on getting the sort of online magazine component up, more written works, perhaps more long-form interviews, stuff that we could really do to sort of dig deeper into these kinds of issues. Have this be a running story that we cover, these tribes and this struggle against this prison. These are things we would like to cover often. But neither the time nor the algorithm will really allow us to do that. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if this was all we covered, we could not keep the lights on here because it just wouldn't get shown to people and no one would watch it. So, that is something exciting that we have in the works. And that online magazine will be run essentially through Substack. So follow our Substack, dodissonance.substack.com. You can sign up for free. You don't have to become a paid member. If we do paid content, we'll blast the paid content out to all the member platforms. But it's a free online magazine tool and a free newsletter. So sign up. We will have that coming online by the end of the month for sure. So we could do more stuff like this as opposed to like once every couple weeks.
Please clap.